Question from me at the moment, Mr. Chisholm. I don't know whether you've seen the evidence from Jim McConalogue. Basically, boiling it down is parliamentary oversight of government functioning. And he makes the point that actually by farming out government policy to ALBs, and next steps agencies and non-departmental organisations, tends to give them a life of their own and makes parliamentary scrutiny of government function much more difficult, and it makes, of course, them liable to judicial review, so that policy is being made by judicial review rather than by Parliament over the functioning of government. When you're sort of considering next steps agencies and ALBs and non-departmental organisations, setting up new ones, is that something you consider as to whether it actually would be done better within a government department rather than outside?
Yes, absolutely. And indeed, before we even get to that, does it really need to be done at all by the state, indeed, any part of the state, which indeed is looked at? And then, and there's a very elaborate kind of process for doing that. It's briefly touched on in the NAO report, but it was followed, for example, in the example of the Office for Environmental Protection. They did look, first of all, is this something the state really needs to do? And also, were there market mechanisms there? And if it had to be the state, what's the type of body, etc. So all of that gets looked at very hard. As you're aware, there are these sort of 3 tests that are applied by the Cabinet Office, have been applied for a number of years. 2 of which relate to kind of independence from the perspective of independence from ministers and being able to show that the way in which the data is produced is absolutely separate from any possibility of political motivations. But the other really is around the kernel of expertise. So those are the 3 sort of criteria which, and you have to satisfy one of those to have a chance of being a new arm's length body. The reality is that we're actually not creating very many arm's length bodies. That what we have is a big stock arm's length bodies, and some of those are, kind of, I would say, famous and much loved national institutions that have been going for a long time, like the NHS or British Museum or the Met Office or Ordnance Survey or Charity Commission, National Archives. I don't think we need to be particularly worried about trying to consolidate those into new forms or whatever. But where we do have a bit of a focus on smaller bodies, which some of which are less efficient to be able to support themselves. So we are very, very wary about creating small bodies of just a handful of people, where that does create a particular kind of efficiency challenge. Also, to the point that was made, from a parliamentary accountability perspective, these bodies are still absolutely accountable through Parliament and through ministers. And the body which is particularly, I suppose, separate from ordinary departments is a non-ministerial department. And that is, therefore, the rarest and the hardest to create, because we recognise that's the furthest, if you like, away from ministers, whereas at the other end of the spectrum, executive agencies are absolutely still part of departments from the point of view of legal responsibilities and as an entity.
Thank you, Mr. Chisholm. I hope you